She stood at the checkout counter of Hartley's Organic Market in Rittenhouse Square, still wearing her night shift scrubs, a faded stain near the collar. She had not had time to notice hair, pulled back with a band that was losing its grip, sneakers worn smooth on both heels. 4 items on the belt: formula, oatmeal, a bag of apples, a small bottle of orange juice. The cashier scanned them slowly. Tamara watched the number climb on the screen, reached into her front pocket, and pulled out a neat stack of coupons she had cut that morning before her shift ended. The woman behind her exhaled. Not quietly. The kind of exhale designed to be heard, to make someone feel the weight of their own existence in someone else's way. Then the woman spoke. The woman behind her was Vivienne Ashford Cole, 44 years old. Wife of Gerald Cole, whose name sat on the side of 3 residential towers in downtown Philadelphia. She carried a leather bag the color of dark honey, the kind that does not have a visible price tag because the price is the point. A diamond on her left hand that caught the overhead lighting every time she moved her fingers. A perfume that arrived in the space before she did and stayed after she left. The kind of woman who had learned a long time ago how to make cruelty sound like concern. She looked at the coupons in Tamara's hand. She looked at the scrubs. She looked at the 4 items on the belt. Formula, oatmeal, apples, juice. She did not lower her voice. She did not lean in. She said it clearly to the cashier, but loud enough that every person within 3 registers could hear it. Some people should really shop at places that match their budget. There are plenty of discount stores within walking distance. It landed in the checkout aisle the way a slap lands. Not because of volume, because of aim. The cashier, a young woman named Monique, 22, first job out of community college, froze with a coupon halfway to the scanner. Her eyes moved to Tamara, then to Vivienne, then back to the register. She did not say a word. She had been working at Hartley's for 5 months, and she had already learned which customers the store considered worth protecting and which ones it did not. Tamara did not look at Vivienne. She did not put the coupons back in her pocket. She did not step aside or apologize for the time she was taking. She handed the next coupon to Monique and waited. The way a person waits when they have already decided they are not going to be moved by someone else's opinion of where they belong. Vivienne watched her. The lack of reaction seemed to sharpen something in her. The kind of person who needs a response the way a flame needs air. She turned back to Monique. Is there an express lane for people who actually pay full price? Because this is taking an unreasonable amount of time. Monique scanned the coupon. Her hand was shaking slightly. She did not look up. A man in the next aisle over glanced toward the sound, then looked down at his basket. A woman with a toddler in her cart studied the candy rack beside the register, as though it required her complete attention. Another customer, mid-60s, reading glasses on a chain around her neck, looked directly at Vivienne for 2 full seconds, then turned away and said nothing. The silence of witnesses. The particular silence of people who recognize something wrong and choose the ordinary comfort of not being involved. It is a silence most people have stood inside, at least once in their lives. On one side or the other. Tamara handed over the last coupon. Her face had not changed. Not tighter, not looser. The same steady, even expression she had walked in with. She had stood in rooms where people looked at her the way Vivienne was looking at her now. She had learned that the look always said more about the person giving it than the person receiving it. She had also learned something else, that responding to it gave it weight, and she had stopped carrying other people's weight a long time ago. Monique finished scanning. The total appeared on the screen. Tamara reached into her bag for her debit card, and that is when Vivienne turned to the cashier one more time. I would like to speak to a manager. This line has been held up long enough, and I have somewhere to be. She said it the way a person files a complaint. Measured. Official. The kind of tone that expects immediate compliance because it has always received it. Monique pressed the call button without looking at anyone. A small red light blinked above Register 4. Tamara did not turn around. She stood with her card in her hand and waited for the transaction to finish. She was not going to rush. She was not going to shrink. She was going to stand in this line and pay for her groceries the way every other person in this store had the right to do, and she was not going to perform gratitude or apology for the privilege of doing so. The red light blinked. Somewhere in the back of the store, footsteps started moving toward the front. Nobody at Register 4 said a word. The only sound was the soft hum of the refrigerated cases along the far wall, and the beep of a scanner 2 aisles over, where the rest of the store continued as though nothing was happening. Something was happening. Every person standing near that counter knew it. They just had not decided yet what they were going to do about it. Derek Hillman walked up from the back office 30 seconds later. Mid-30s khaki pants, a name tag clipped to a navy polo, the store logo stitched above the breast pocket. He had managed this Hartley's location for 2 years. He was good at it in the way that certain managers are good. He kept the shelves stocked, the staff scheduled, the complaints low, and the high-value members satisfied. Especially the high-value members. Hartley's ran a tiered membership program. Platinum members spent a minimum of $8,000 a year. Vivian Ashford Cole was platinum. He recognized her immediately. Not her face specifically, but the type, the bag, the ring. The posture of a woman who expected the room to rearrange itself around her preferences. He had been trained, not in words but in practice, to make that rearrangement happen as smoothly as possible. He looked at the register. He looked at Tamara. He looked at the coupons Monique had already scanned. He said, "Ma'am, I apologize for the wait. We actually have a secondary register right over here, where we can process your coupons separately. It might be faster for everyone." He said it with a smile. The kind of smile that has the right shape but carries no warmth behind it. He was not solving a problem. He was removing one customer from the sightline of another, and everyone at that counter knew it. Tamara looked at him. She said, "I am in line. I was here first. I will finish here." 7 words. No explanation behind them. No justification offered. The same way a person states a fact that does not require permission. Derek hesitated. He glanced at Vivian, then back at Tamara. He said, "Of course, ma'am, I just thought it might be more convenient." For Tamara said, "I will finish here." Vivian shifted her weight. She had not gotten what she wanted. The manager had come, but the line had not moved. The woman in scrubs had not stepped aside. Something tightened in her expression, the polite mask slipping just enough to show the edge underneath. She said, "You know, this is exactly the problem. Certain people teaching their children that the world owes them something, that they can hold up an entire line and everyone else just has to wait." She said it to Derek. But she said it about Tamara, and she said it loud enough for every person in that aisle to hear, including the small girl sitting in the shopping cart behind Tamara's hip, Zuri Osei, 4 years old. Brown skin, wide dark eyes, a stuffed bear with one missing ear pressed against her chest. She was not old enough to understand what the woman behind them was saying, but she was old enough to feel it, the way children feel weather. Not the name of the storm, but the pressure change in the room. She looked up at her mother. Tamara's jaw tightened once, a single movement, then released. She reached down and adjusted the strap of Zuri's overalls without breaking eye contact with the register screen. Tamara Osei was 31 years old. She worked the night shift at Jefferson Memorial Hospital 11 at night to 7 in the morning 5 nights a week. She made $19.40 an hour. Her rent was $1.150 a month for a 1-bedroom in Germantown, where Zuri slept in the bedroom and Tamara slept on a fold-out couch in the living room. Childcare cost $680 a month. The woman who watched Zuri overnight was a retired teacher named Mrs. Patterson, who lived 2 floors down and charged less than any licensed facility because she had raised 4 children alone and understood what it meant to need help you could not fully afford. After every shift, Tamara picked up Zuri at 7:15, stopped to buy whatever groceries they needed, and was home by 8. She slept from 8:30 to 1 in the afternoon. Then she was up with Zuri until 10 at night when the whole thing started again. She had been awake for 22 hours. She had not sat down since 3 in the morning when she took her break in the staff room and ate a granola bar standing up because the chairs were all taken. She did not look tired. She looked like a woman who had stopped measuring her life by how rested she was and started measuring it by whether her daughter had what she needed. And right now her daughter needed apples, oatmeal, formula, and juice. And her mother was going to stand in this line until she paid for them. Monique finished the transaction. The screen read $23.14 after coupons. Tamara inserted her card. The machine beeped. She put the bags in the cart next to Zuri and turned to leave. And 10 steps away, near the produce display, where the organic lettuces sat in neat rows under a misting system, A man in a gray pullover with reading glasses pushed up on his forehead, set his shopping basket on the floor. He had been standing very still for the last 3 minutes. He had heard every word. He straightened up, and he started walking toward Register 4. Malcolm Bridgewater was 52 years old. He was not wearing anything that would tell you who he was. Gray pullover, dark jeans, a pair of brown leather shoes that were clean but not new. No watch, no ring, no name tag, no logo, no signal. He looked like a man stopping in for groceries on a Saturday morning because that is exactly what he was doing. He had a basket with 6 items in it: spinach, 2 lemons, a jar of olives, bread, a block of Parmesan, and a bottle of sparkling water. He had been choosing between 2 types of olive oil near the back of the store when he first heard the voice. Not Tamara's voice, the other one. The one that carried across the store the way certain voices carry. Not because they are loud, but because they are aimed. He put the olive oil back on the shelf. He listened. He did not move for almost a full minute. Then he picked up his basket and walked slowly toward the front of the store. He did not rush. He did not raise his chin or square his shoulders. He moved the way a man moves when he has already made a decision and sees no reason to announce it. He reached Register 4 just as Tamara was turning to leave. He set his basket on the belt behind where hers had been. He looked at Vivienne, then at Derek, then back at Vivienne. He said, "I believe this woman was here first. She was paying for her groceries. And from what I heard, she was the only person in this line who did not owe anyone an apology." Vivienne looked at him. She took in the pullover, the reading glasses, the absence of anything on his wrist or his hands that would indicate status. She smiled. The kind of smile a person gives someone they have already categorized and dismissed. She said, "And you are?" Malcolm did not answer the question. He turned to Derek. "Is there a problem with how that customer was paying?" Derek opened his mouth. Nothing came out immediately. He looked at Vivienne, then back at Malcolm. "Sir, we were just trying to accommodate everyone and keep the line," Malcolm said. "She had coupons. She paid." The line moved. What exactly needed to be accommodated, Derek did not answer. Malcolm Bridgewater had not always been the kind of man who walked toward a confrontation in a grocery store. There had been a time when he would have done exactly what the man in the next aisle did: glanced over, looked away, told himself it was not his business. He grew up on 56th Street in West Philadelphia. His mother, Gwendolyn Bridgewater, worked for the city sanitation department for 27 years. She raised 3 children in a 2-bedroom row house, where the radiator in the back room never worked properly and the front steps had a crack down the middle that no one ever fixed. She left for work before dawn. She came home smelling like the truck. She scrubbed her hands raw every evening before she made dinner because she did not want her children to see the work on her skin. She had been looked at the way Tamara had just been looked at more times than Malcolm could count. In stores, at school functions, at the doctor's office, where she paid in cash because insurance did not cover the visit. He had stood beside her as a boy and watched people's eyes move from her uniform to her shoes to her face, and he had watched his mother keep walking as though the eyes were not there. She never said a word about it. She did not have to. He learned everything he needed to learn from the straightness of her back and the evenness of her voice, and the way she put one foot in front of the other, as though nobody in the room had the power to slow her down. He became a surgeon. Spent 20 years in operating rooms at 3 hospitals in the Philadelphia area. He was now the chairman of the board at Jefferson Memorial Hospital, overseeing a system with 3 facilities, 4,200 employees, and an annual budget of $1.2 billion. He had not told anyone in this store any of that. He had no intention of doing so. He had not stepped forward because of who he was. He had stepped forward because of what he saw. A woman paying for groceries. Another woman trying to make her feel small for doing it. A manager siding with the cruelty because it came wrapped in a platinum membership. And a room full of people who had decided it was easier to look at the candy rack than to say a single word. He did not know who Tamara was. He had never seen her before. He did not know she worked in his hospital. He did not know she had held his mother's hand 3 months ago in a room he had never entered. He knew nothing about her except what he had just witnessed. And what he had just witnessed was enough. Vivienne was still smiling. The kind of smile that holds its shape when the person behind it has not yet realized the room has shifted. Malcolm did not smile back. He stood at register 4 with his basket on the belt and his hands at his sides, and looked at her with the kind of stillness that does not need volume to carry. Tamara had stopped near the exit. She was adjusting the bags in the cart. Zuri was holding her bear and watching the man at the register. She did not know who he was either. She saw a man in a gray shirt who was not yelling, but who also was not leaving. And just for a moment Malcolm's eyes moved to the front of Tamara's scrubs, to the badge clipped near her left shoulder. Small white rectangle hospital logo, a name printed in block letters. His gaze held there for 1 second. Then he looked away. Something crossed his face. Quick. Gone before anyone could name it. The kind of recognition that arrives in the body before the mind has finished catching up. Vivienne did not leave. She did not step back. She did not lower her voice or reconsider a single word she had said. Instead, she reached into her bag, pulled out her phone, and made a call. She did not turn away from the register. She did not whisper. She spoke clearly, deliberately, the way a person speaks when they want the room to hear both sides of a conversation that only has one. You will not believe what is happening at Hartley's right now. I am being harassed. Harassed. By people who clearly do not belong in this store. And the staff is doing absolutely nothing about it. She paused, listened, then said, I am going to make sure this location hears about it. Every single person in corporate is going to know what happened here today. She looked at Derek when she said it. Not at the phone. At Derek. The words were for whoever was on the other end of the line. The look was for him. And Derek received it exactly the way it was intended. His face shifted. The practiced calm gave way to something tighter. He glanced toward the back of the store as though someone there might rescue him from the situation he had helped create. He turned to Tamara. His voice dropped lower. Almost gentle. The kind of gentle that is not gentle at all but wants very badly to pass for it. Ma'am, perhaps it would be easier if Tamara said, I am almost done. 4 words. No explanation attached. No negotiation offered. She inserted her card into the machine and waited for the beep. Zuri shifted in the cart. She had been quiet for a long time. The kind of quiet a 4-year-old holds when she can feel something wrong in the air but does not have the words for it yet. She reached up and pulled the sleeve of her mother's scrubs. Small fingers, tight grip. Mama, can we go home? Tamara looked down. And everything changed. Not in the room. In her. The set of her jaw softened. The line between her shoulders released. Her voice dropped into something warm and low and entirely separate from everything else happening around her. The voice a mother uses when she is shielding her child from the room they are both standing in. 2 more minutes, baby. Mama is almost done. She said it the way she probably said it every morning at 7:15 when she picked Zuri up from Mrs. Patterson's apartment after an 8-hour shift. The way she probably said it when Zuri asked for one more story and Tamara had been awake for 20 hours and still read it anyway. 2 more minutes, baby. The sentence of a woman who had divided her life into small, manageable pieces and carried each one without asking anyone to help her hold them. Malcolm watched from where he stood. He had not moved. His hands were still at his sides. His face had not changed. But something behind his eyes had. He was looking at the small girl in the cart, at the bear with one ear, at the way her fingers held the fabric of her mother's sleeve. And he was somewhere else for a moment. 56th Street. A kitchen with a cracked window. His mother standing at the stove in the clothes she had worn to work that day because she had not had time to change. A boy asking if dinner was almost ready. His mother turning around and saying in that same voice, that exact same voice, 2 more minutes, baby. The machine beeped. The transaction went through. Tamara pulled her card out, put it back in her bag, and placed the grocery bags in the cart next to Zuri. She turned the cart toward the door. She did not look at Vivienne. She did not look at Derek. She had come to buy groceries for her daughter. She had bought them. She was leaving. And that is when Vivienne said it. She was still holding the phone. She may have still been on the call. It did not matter. She said it to the room. She said it to Tamara's back. She said it loud enough that Zuri, sitting in the cart facing backward, heard every word. At least teach your daughter not to end up like this. 9 words. Said the way a person says something they have been sharpening in their mouth for the last 5 minutes, waiting for the right moment to release it. Not a shout, not a whisper. Delivered with the even measured cruelty of someone who has never once been held accountable for the things she says to people she considers beneath her. The store went silent. Not quiet, silent. The refrigerators hummed, a scanner beeped somewhere far away, but every person near Register 4 stopped moving. Tamara's hands tightened on the cart handle. One movement, then released. She did not turn around. She kept walking, because her daughter was in that cart. And whatever she was feeling in that moment, she was not going to let Zuri see it on her face. Malcolm set his basket on the floor. He did not drop it. He placed it down. Carefully. The way a person sets something aside when they have decided that what comes next requires both hands free and full attention. He straightened up. He looked at Vivienne. Then he started walking. Not fast. Not slow. With purpose. The kind of walk that does not announce itself, but changes the direction of every pair of eyes in the room. He reached the space between Vivienne and the exit where Tamara was heading. He did not block anyone, he simply stood. And the room understood immediately that he was not moving until he had said what he came to say. He looked at Derek first. His voice was level, even. The kind of quiet that does not need volume to carry. "What is your name?" Derek blinked. "Derek Hillman. I am the store manager." "Who is your district manager?" Derek hesitated. "I can get you that information if I will get it myself." He turned to Vivienne. He did not raise his voice. He did not step closer than necessary. He stood where he was and looked at her the way a person looks at something they intend to address completely and precisely without wasting a single word. He said, "You just told a mother in front of her child that the child should not end up like her." He paused. Not for effect, for weight. To let the sentence sit in the room the way it had sat in the room when Vivienne said it. Only now it was being said back to her. Reflected, returned, stripped of the cruelty she had dressed it in and laid bare for what it actually was. "I want you to hear what you said. I want you to hear it out loud in this room the way that little girl heard it 30 seconds ago." Vivienne's smile did not disappear. It froze. The particular freeze of a face that has been performing confidence for so long it does not know how to rearrange itself when the confidence is no longer available. She said, "I did not mean it like Malcolm said. You meant it exactly like that. Every person in this room heard exactly what you meant." Silence. Not the polite silence of a grocery store on a Saturday morning. The other kind. The kind that falls when someone has said something true and the room needs a moment to absorb it. The woman with the toddler in the next aisle had stopped pretending to look at the candy rack. She was watching now. The man who had glanced away earlier was watching now. Monique, still standing behind Register 4, nodded once. Small, almost invisible. The kind of nod a person gives when someone finally says out loud the thing they have been holding in their chest for the last 10 minutes. Malcolm did not yell. He did not perform outrage. He did not wave his arms or raise his finger or deliver a speech designed to make himself feel righteous. He stood still. He spoke clearly, and every word he said carried the particular weight of a man who had spent his entire life learning the difference between power that announces itself and power that simply shows up when it is needed. There are two kinds of silence in a room like that. The silence of someone who has been stripped of their voice, and the silence of someone who does not need to raise theirs. Tamara had stood inside the first kind for the last 15 minutes. Malcolm was standing inside the second kind now. The difference between the two is not volume, it is position. It is who the room decides to believe when nobody is speaking. Tamara had stopped near the door. She had turned the cart slightly. She was watching. Zuri was watching. The bear with one ear was pressed against the side of the cart, and Zuri's hand was resting on her mother's wrist. Malcolm's eyes moved one more time to the badge on Tamara's scrubs. This time he read it. T. Osei. Jefferson Memorial Hospital. The letters were small but clear. He stood very still. His expression did not change in the way that most people's expressions change. It changed underneath. The way a foundation shifts before the surface shows the crack. He knew that name. Not from a meeting. Not from a spreadsheet. From his mother's voice. From a conversation at a kitchen table 3 months ago, when Lorraine Bridgewater had sat across from him with a cup of tea she had not touched and told him about the night she thought she was going to die. She had said, "There was a nurse. Young woman. She held my hand the whole time. She kept saying, 'I am right here, Mrs. Bridgewater. I am not going anywhere.' She did not have to do that. That was not part of her job. But she stayed. She had said the name. Malcolm had written it down. He had meant to find her, to send a letter, to do something. But the weeks had passed, the way weeks do when you are running a hospital system with 3 facilities and 4,200 employees and a board that meets every other Thursday and a budget that requires your attention more than your gratitude does. He had not sent the letter. He had not made the call. The name had stayed in a notebook on his desk at home. T. Osei. And now she was standing 10 feet away from him in a grocery store on a Saturday morning, wearing the same hospital badge, holding the handle of a shopping cart with a 4-year-old girl inside it, and she had just been told in front of her daughter that the child should not end up like here. Something moved through Malcolm. Not fast, not slow, with the particular weight of a debt arriving at the exact moment you did not expect it. The way certain things find you, not when you are looking for them. Not when you are ready, but when the universe decides that enough time has passed and the balance needs correcting. He did not say anything to Tamara. Not yet. He did not walk over and introduce himself. He did not tell her who he was or what he knew or what his mother had said about her at that kitchen table. He stood where he was and held what he had just understood, the way a person holds something fragile, carefully, with both hands, knowing that the next thing he did with it mattered more than the moment of discovery itself. He turned back to Vivienne. She was still standing at register 4. Her phone was at her side now. The call had ended or she had forgotten about it. Her posture had shifted. Not collapsed, not yet, but no longer the straight-backed certainty she had walked in with. Something in the room had changed, and she could feel it even if she could not name it. Malcolm took out his own phone. He made one call. Short. 15 seconds. He said 2 sentences into it and hung up. He put the phone back in his pocket. Then he looked at Vivienne. "Your husband is Gerald Cole. Cole Development Group. He sits on the fundraising board at Jefferson Memorial Hospital." He paused. "I know this because I am the chairman of that board." The color left Vivienne's face the way water leaves a sink, slowly at first, then all at once. She looked at his pullover, his reading glasses, his shoes. She looked at him the way a person looks at a door they had walked past 100 times without ever realizing what was on the other side of it. She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Malcolm said, "I am not going to tell you what happens next. I am not going to threaten you or lecture you or make you feel the way you made that woman feel. That is not why I am standing here." He said, "I am going to let you think about what you did today, in this room, in front of a child. And I am going to let you decide what kind of person you want to be when you walk out of that door." He said it the way he said everything, without drama, without performance, the way a fact is stated when it does not require agreement to be true. Vivienne stood for another moment. Her hand tightened around her phone. Her jaw moved once like she was going to speak. She did not speak. She picked up her bag from the counter. She turned, and she walked out of Hartley's Organic Market without buying a single thing. The automatic doors opened for her and closed behind her, and the sound of the street came in for 1 second and then was gone. Nobody in the store watched her leave. They were all looking at Malcolm. And Malcolm was looking at the woman near the exit with the shopping cart and the 4-year-old girl and the badge that read T. Osei. There was a small seating area near the front of the store. 2 wooden benches, a fake plant in a ceramic pot. The kind of space grocery stores build so people feel like the store cares about them sitting down even though nobody ever uses it. Malcolm walked over to it. He sat down. He did not ask Tamara to join him. He just sat. And after a moment, Tamara pushed the cart over and stood near the bench. She did not sit. Not yet. Zuri reached into one of the grocery bags and pulled out an apple. She held it with both hands and bit into it. The crunch was the loudest sound in that corner of the store. Malcolm said, "Where do you work?" Tamara looked at him. She had not decided yet what this man wanted. She had spent the last 20 minutes being looked at by strangers, and she was not in the habit of giving pieces of herself to people she did not know. But he had stood in that line. He had said what he said. And he was sitting on a bench in a grocery store, with no agenda visible on his face. She said Jefferson Memorial, night shift, nursing. He nodded. He did not say anything for a moment. Then he said, "What does your day look like?" She almost did not answer. Not because the question was too personal, but because nobody had asked her that in a long time. Not a doctor at the hospital. Not a friend. Not a caseworker or a counselor or a supervisor. Nobody had looked at her and said, "What does your day look like?" as though they actually wanted to know the answer. She sat down. She said, "I drop Zuri off with the woman who watches her at 10 at night. I start my shift at 11. I work until 7. I pick Zuri up at 7:15. We stop for groceries if we need them. We are home by 8. I sleep from 8:30 to about 1. Then I am up with her until 10. Then we do it again." She said it the way a person reads a bus schedule. Flat, factual, no complaint woven into the words, no pause where she expected sympathy. This is just what the day looks like. The way a person describes something they stopped questioning a long time ago because questioning it would require energy they do not have to spare. Malcolm said, "How many nights?" 5. "How many hours of sleep?" 4. Sometimes 5 if she does not wake up. He was quiet. Zuri took another bite of the apple. A piece of juice ran down her chin and she wiped it on the ear of her bear. Malcolm said, "Why?" Nursing Tamara looked at Zuri, then back at him. She said, "My mother got sick when I was 15. We lived in Camden. She did not have insurance. She went to a clinic when it was already too late and they sent her to a hospital and she was there for 11 days and she died on the 12th. She paused. Not for drama, because the sentence still cost her something to say out loud even after 15 years. She was alone most of those nights. I was not old enough to stay past visiting hours. The nurses were busy. The hospital was understaffed. She told me on the phone one night that she had pressed the call button 3 times and nobody came for 40 minutes. She looked at her hands. I decided when I was 16 that I was going to be a nurse. Not because I wanted to save people, because I did not want anyone else to be alone in a hospital room at 2 a.m., the way my mother was." Malcolm did not move. Something in his expression shifted, but he did not let it show fully. He sat with what she had said the way you sit with something heavy that has just been placed in your lap without warning. He said, "Can I ask you something else?" She waited. "What do you need?" "Not what happened today. Not what that woman said. What do you actually need?" Tamara almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because the question was so direct and so simple and so far from anything anyone had asked her in years that she did not know how to receive it. She said, "I do not need money." He said, "I did not offer any." She looked at him. She said, "People see the scrubs and the coupons and the kid in the cart and they think they know what I need. They think I need someone to come along and fix things. I do not need fixing. I need the system I work inside to work the way it is supposed to." He waited. She said, "I need the evening shift, 7 to 3, so I can put my daughter to bed at night, so I can be the one who reads her a story. So she does not wake up at 2 a.m. and reach for me and find someone else. I have been requesting that shift for 7 months. It never opens up." She said it without bitterness, without performance, the way a person states a fact they have accepted as permanent even though it should not be. Malcolm looked at her. Then at Zuri. The girl had finished the apple and was holding the core in one hand and the bear in the other. He said, "I may be able to help with that." Tamara looked at him, not with hope, with the particular caution of a woman who had learned a long time ago that help usually comes with a shape you did not ask for and a cost you did not agree to. She said how he did not answer that question. "Not yet." He said, "Can I tell you something first?" She waited. He said, "My name is Malcolm Bridgewater. I am the chairman of the board at Jefferson Memorial Hospital." Tamara went still. Her hand, which had been resting on the edge of the cart, did not move. Her face did not change. But something behind her eyes shifted. The way a room shifts when someone turns on a light you did not know was there. She said, "You are the chairman." He said, "I am." She looked at his pullover, his reading glasses, his basket of groceries still sitting on the floor near register 4. She said, "You were buying spinach." He almost smiled. I was buying spinach. A moment passed. Zuri dropped the apple core on the floor of the cart and looked up at Malcolm with the unbothered curiosity of a 4-year-old who has no idea what a chairman is and does not care. Malcolm said, 3 months ago my mother was brought into your hospital at 2 a.m. Her name is Lorraine Bridgewater, room 412. She had a minor stroke. The doctors stabilized her by morning. But the person who found the signs first, who called the code, who sat beside her for 4 hours until I arrived at 6, was a night shift nurse named T.O.Say. He looked at her. That was you. Tamara's lips parted slightly. She blinked once, then again. She said, Lorraine. He said, you remember her, she said, the woman who kept apologizing for pressing the call button. He nodded. She said, I told her to stop apologizing. I told her that is what the button is for. Malcolm's voice changed. It got slower, heavier. The way voices change when the thing a person is saying has been sitting inside them for a long time and is finally finding its way out. He said, my mother talked about you for weeks. She told me. She told her pastor. She told every person who came to visit her. She said there was a nurse who held her hand the whole time, who kept saying, I am right here, Mrs. Bridgewater. I am not going anywhere. She said she had not felt that safe in a hospital in her entire life. He paused. He said, I meant to find you. I wrote your name down. I was going to send a letter. I was going to call the nursing director and make sure it was recognized. And then the weeks passed and the meetings piled up and I did not do it. I did not do the one thing I should have done. He looked at her. You held my mother's hand at 2 a.m. when no one was watching. And today someone humiliated you in a grocery store and thought no one was watching either. But I was standing right there. The store was quiet. The hum of the refrigerators. The distant beep of a register somewhere in another aisle. Saturday morning continuing outside the windows as though nothing unusual was happening inside. Tamara's eyes were wet. She was holding them back. But they were there. She said very quietly, I was just doing my job. Malcolm looked at her for a long moment. He said, that is exactly what my mother said when I asked her why she scrubbed office floors for 30 years so I could go to medical school. She said, I was just doing my job. Nobody spoke after that. The sentence sat between them the way certain sentences do. Not because they are complicated, because they are so simple that the weight of them takes a moment to land. Zuri looked up at her mother. She said, Mama, why are you making that face? Tamara laughed. Short, wet. The kind of laugh that lives right next to tears and sometimes gets mistaken for one. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand and said, because someone said something nice, baby. Malcolm said, I want to meet your daughter properly. And I need to introduce you to someone. Tamara looked at him. Who? He said, the woman whose hand you held. They drove west through the city. Malcolm's car was clean, but not new. A 4-year-old sedan with a scratch on the rear bumper he had never bothered to fix. Zuri sat in the back in her car seat, holding her bear, watching the buildings change through the window the way children watch the world. With full attention and no commentary. Tamara sat in the passenger seat. She had not said yes right away. She had looked at Malcolm for a long time in that grocery store, measuring him the way she measured everyone. Not by what they said, by what they did. And what he had done was stand in a checkout line and say out loud what everyone else in the room already knew but refused to say. That was enough for her to get in the car. It was not enough for her to let her guard down. Those were two different things. They turned onto a street in Overbrook. Narrow. Lined with row houses that had been standing for 60 years. Front steps where people sat in the evenings. Small yards with chain-link fences. The kind of neighborhood that looks ordinary from the outside and holds everything that matters on the inside. Malcolm parked in front of a brick house with a green door. A small garden out front, marigolds along the walkway. He sat for a moment before getting out. He said, she does not know we are coming. Tamara said, is she going to be all right with that? He said, she has been hoping to see you again for 3 months. She just did not know how to find you. He got out of the car. Tamara got Zuri out of the back seat. The girl held her bear in one arm and reached for her mother's hand with the other. They walked up the front steps together. Malcolm knocked twice, footsteps inside. Slow, the sound of a cane tapping on a hardwood floor. The lock turned, the door opened. Lorraine Bridgewater stood in the doorway. 78 years old. a cane in her left hand, a cardigan buttoned to the second button, reading glasses pushed up into her hair. She was thinner than she had been 3 months ago. The stroke had taken something from her. Not her posture, not her eyes. She stood straight. Her eyes were full and warm and completely present. The eyes of a woman who had spent her entire life paying close attention to the world and had no intention of letting that stop now. She looked at Malcolm first, then at the woman standing beside him. Then she went still. She did not ask who Tamara was. She did not look at Malcolm for an explanation. She looked at Tamara's face and she knew. "You are my nurse." 3 words, said quietly. Said with the kind of certainty that does not come from memory alone. It comes from the body, from the hands, from the particular way a person knows someone who held them steady when they were afraid. Tamara said, "Mrs. Bridgewater." Lorraine's eyes filled. She did not try to hold them back. She was 78 years old, and she had stopped pretending that being moved by something was a weakness a long time ago. She reached out and took Tamara's hand, the same hand that had held hers in room 412 at 2 a.m. 3 months ago. Then she looked down. Zuri was standing behind Tamara's leg, one hand gripping the fabric of her mother's scrubs, the other holding the bear. She was looking up at Lorraine with the serious, careful expression of a child deciding whether a new person is safe. Lorraine leaned down. It was not easy. The cane shifted. Her knee protested. But she lowered herself until she was closer to the girl's height, and she said, "And who is this serious little person?" Zuri looked at her mother. Tamara nodded once. Zuri looked back at Lorraine. "I am Zuri." Lorraine smiled. "The real kind. The kind that starts somewhere deep and arrives on the face last." She said, "Zuri, that is a beautiful name. Do you know what it means?" Zuri shook her head. Lorraine said, "It means beautiful in Swahili. And whoever named you knew exactly what they were doing." Tamara looked away for 1 second. Just one. Because that name had been chosen by her mother, picked out during a phone call from the hospital 3 weeks before she died. She had said, "If it is a girl, name her Zuri, because she will be beautiful, and she should know it from the first day." Tamara had not been pregnant at the time. Her mother was just planning ahead. The way mothers do, even from a hospital bed, even when they know they will not be there to see it. Lorraine straightened up slowly. She looked at Tamara. She said, "Come inside, both of you. I made tea this morning and I have been looking for someone to share it with." They went inside. The house was small, clean. A living room with a couch covered in a knitted blanket, a kitchen where the counter had a sugar tin on one side and a chipped blue mug on the other, photographs on the wall above the fireplace. Malcolm as a boy, Malcolm in a white coat, Malcolm at a podium. And between all of those, a woman in a sanitation department uniform standing in front of a row house with 3 children and a smile that could fill a room. Lorraine sat in her chair by the window. Tamara sat on the couch. Zuri climbed up beside her, then slid off and walked over to Lorraine's chair and stood next to it. She put her bear on the armrest. Lorraine looked down at it. She said, "What happened to his ear?" Zuri said. "He lost it." Lorraine said, "Well, he still looks very handsome." Zuri smiled. The first real smile she had made since they walked into Hartley's that morning. It changed her whole face. It changed the room. Lorraine looked at Tamara. Her voice shifted. The warmth was still there, but something steadier moved underneath it. She said, "You stayed with me that night. I never forgot that. Not for one day." Tamara said, "It was my job, Mrs. Bridgewater." Lorraine said, "It was not your job to hold my hand for 4 hours. It was not your job to keep telling me you were not going anywhere. It was not your job to sit in that chair next to my bed when your shift was ending and you could have gone home." She paused. "I know the difference between someone doing their job and someone choosing to stay. You chose to stay." She said, "I told everyone. I told Malcolm. I told my pastor. I told the woman at the grocery store." She smiled. "I probably told the mailman." Then the smile softened. The humor left, and something more serious took its place. She said, "I was scared that night. I woke up and my left arm was not working and I could not feel the side of my face, and I thought, this is it. This is how it ends. Alone in a hospital bed at 2 a.m. on a Wednesday." She looked at Tamara. "And then you were there, and you said 5 words. I am right here." And I believed you. Because you said it like you meant it, and you stayed like you meant it, and I stopped being scared. She reached over and put her hand on Tamara's hand. Old hands. Warm. Worn smooth from decades of work. The kind of hands that had scrubbed floors and cooked dinners and held children and folded laundry and done every quiet, invisible thing that keeps a family standing. She said, "That is not a small thing. That is everything." The room was quiet. Malcolm stood near the kitchen doorway. He did not speak. He did not need to. Some moments do not need a narrator. They just need a room and two people and the truth sitting between them, like something that has finally been set down after being carried for a very long time. Some people build monuments. Some people hold hands at 2 a.m. The world remembers the monuments. But the people who were afraid at 2 a.m., they remember the hands. Outside, Malcolm walked Tamara to the car. Zuri was in the back seat again, already half asleep. The bear was on her lap. Her eyes were closing. It was almost noon, and the sun was high, and the street was quiet in the particular way that Philadelphia side streets are quiet on Saturday afternoons. Malcolm said, "I want to talk to you about something." Tamara looked at him. She had been waiting for this. The offer, the gesture, the part where the man with the title and the position tries to fix things with the tools he has because that is what people with tools do. She had already decided what she was going to say. He said, "The hospital has a scholarship program for nurses pursuing their nurse practitioner certification. I would like to recommend you for it. There is also the matter of your shift request, and I would like to help with Zuri's childcare." He said all three as though he were reading items off a list. No performance, no grand gesture, just the facts of what he could offer laid out clearly. Tamara was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "The childcare. No, I pay for that myself. I have always paid for that myself, and I am going to keep paying for it." He nodded. She said, "The shift. If the evening shift opens up because it is the right operational decision, because the scheduling makes sense, because someone reviewed the requests and mine came up, I will take it. If it opens up because you made a phone call on my behalf, I will not." He looked at her. He did not argue. He did not try to explain that a phone call and an operational decision are not always different things. He just nodded again. She was quiet for longer this time. She looked through the back window at Zuri, whose eyes were fully closed now. Then she said, "The scholarship." Malcolm waited. "I have been looking at that program for 2 years. I went to the website. I read every requirement. I know the coursework. I know the clinical hours. I know the timeline." She paused. "I could not afford the application fee." Malcolm said, "The application fee is $85. Tamara said, "I know exactly how much it is." The number sat in the air between them. $85. The distance between a woman with 2 years of research and a woman with an application submitted. The distance between wanting something and being allowed to reach for it. $85 that she could not spare because every dollar she had was already assigned to keeping 2 people alive and sheltered and fed. Malcolm said, "That is not charity. That is the hospital investing in one of its best nurses. The program exists for exactly this, for people who have already proven they belong in it." Tamara looked at him. For the first time in the entire morning, something in her expression changed. Not a smile, not relief, something quieter. The particular look of a person who has been holding a door closed for a very long time and is now just considering the possibility that opening it does not mean losing what is on the other side. She said, "I will think about it." He said, "That is all I am asking." In the weeks that followed, things changed. Not all at once. Not with announcements or grand gestures. The way most real things change. Quietly, one small shift at a time. Malcolm did not make a phone call about the shift. He did something else. He asked the hospital's HR director to run an audit on all outstanding scheduling requests older than 90 days. There were 47 of them. 47 requests from nurses, technicians, and support staff that had been submitted through the system and never processed. Some had been sitting there for over a year. Tamara's was one of them, 7 months. Filed correctly. Routed to the right department. And then nothing. Not denied, not approved, just stuck. The way things get stuck in systems that are built for efficiency but run by people who are too busy to notice what falls through. The evening shift opened up 3 weeks later. Not because Malcolm made a call, because someone finally looked. Tamara took it. 7-3. She dropped Zuri off at Mrs. Patterson's at 6:30. She picked her up at 3:15. She was home by 4. She cooked dinner. She gave Zuri a bath. She read her a story. She put her to bed. The first night she tucked Zuri in at 8 o'clock and watched her fall asleep in the bedroom they shared. She sat on the edge of the bed for a long time afterward. She did not cry. She did not celebrate. She just sat there. The way a person sits when something they have been carrying for years is finally set down and the body does not yet know what to do with the absence of weight. She submitted her application to the nurse practitioner program on a Tuesday. She paid the $85 fee herself. She had cut back on one thing for 2 weeks to cover it. She did not tell Malcolm. She did not tell anyone. She filled out the form at the kitchen table after Zuri was asleep, and she submitted it at 11:14 at night, and she closed the laptop and went to bed. Lorraine started calling on Wednesdays. Every Wednesday at 10 in the morning. She called Tamara's phone, and they talked for 20 minutes, sometimes 30. They talked about the weather, about what Lorraine was cooking, about a show Lorraine had watched and could not believe the ending of, about Zuri's bear which Lorraine had offered to sew a new ear onto and Zuri had refused because she said he liked it that way. They talked about everything except the hospital. That part of the story had already been told. What was being built now was something else. Something that did not need a medical chart or a room number. Just 2 women, 178, 131, finding each other the way certain people find each other. Not by accident, by paying attention. Every Sunday, Tamara drove Zuri to the house in Overbrook. Zuri called her Miss Lorraine. She sat on the floor next to Lorraine's chair and showed her drawings she had made during the week. Lorraine studied each one as though it were hanging in a gallery. She asked questions about every color and every shape. She kept them in a folder on the side table next to her reading glasses. Gerald Cole quietly resigned from the hospital's fundraising board 2 weeks after that Saturday. No statement was issued. No explanation was given. His name was removed from the donor wall in the main lobby on a Thursday afternoon when the hallway was empty. And on a Wednesday afternoon in late October, Tamara walked into Hartley's Organic Market in Rittenhouse Square. She had slept 7 hours. She was wearing jeans and a sweatshirt and sneakers that were new, not expensive. Just new. Zuri sat in the cart eating an apple. The same brand, the same size, held in both hands the same way. Tamara pulled a small stack of coupons from her back pocket. She handed them to the cashier, one at a time. She paid with her debit card. She put the bags in the cart. She walked out the front door into the afternoon light. She did not change where she shopped. She had never been the one who needed to change. Some people measure worth by what you carry in your wallet. Some measure it by what you carry in your hands at 2 a.m. when no one is watching. Some cruelty is loud. It announces itself in checkout lines and in the voices of people who have confused money with character. Some kindness is quiet. It sits beside a hospital bed at 2 a.m. It holds a hand. It says 5 words. I am right here. The loud cruelty gets attention. It fills a room. It makes people look away. But the quiet kindness is the one that echoes longest. It moves through years. It crosses grocery store aisles and city blocks and decades and finds its way back to the person who gave it, not because the universe keeps a ledger, but because some things are simply too heavy to disappear. You never know who is watching. Not because someone is keeping score. Because every act, every word, every choice you make in a room full of strangers sends something out into the world that you cannot take back. Vivienne sent something out that Saturday morning. So did Tamara. So did Malcolm. And the difference between the three is not money or power or position. It is what they chose to do when they believed no one important was looking. If this story reminded you of someone who showed you kindness when you needed it most, share it with them. Not tomorrow. Today. Subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you never miss another story like this one. And leave a comment below. Tell us, what is the smallest act of kindness someone did for you that you never forgot? The thing that cost them nothing and gave you everything. And one more thing. Was Malcolm's intervention justice, or was it simply what should happen every single time someone is treated this way, and we have just stopped expecting it? Think about that. And until next time, stay kind, stay present, and never underestimate what it means to someone when you simply choose to stay.